So what does everyone think of when they hear the word trust?
Lots of money.
Rich, yeah, lots of money, rich, okay. So by definition, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a trust is defined, or the word trust is defined as the belief that someone or something is good, reliable, honest, and effective. So hopefully today you're going to understand how that translates into a trust account. So by definition from Merrill Lynch, a trust account is a legal entity where property is placed in from a grantor under the care of a trustee for the benefit of a beneficiary. So going into this, I just want to say that, I understand this isn't something that you're perhaps going to go home and, open a trust account, but this is something that you should be thinking about in your life and do in the future. Or if you're a financial advisor, you could, do this with a client. So before we, get into everything, I just wanted to give a little overview of trust accounts and how they kind of differ from brokerage accounts. So first off, a brokerage firm and a trust company are kind of two separate entities. Brokerage firm, they have to report to FINRA, who, as we know, is kind of the finance police, whereas the trust company, they're governed by the OCC, or the official currency controllers, so they're automatically kind of held to a higher standard with auditors and whatnot. So we're not trying to replace a brokerage account here. You're always going to need that brokerage account with those risky, aggressive investments in order to make money and beat the market. What the trust account is used for is just kind of to help with your portfolio, to supplement it, to just have that level of safety. So prior to being an investment specialist at the trust company, I used to work at brokerage firm as a client associate, so I kind of understand both sides of the playing fields. So how does a trust account work? For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to be talking about revocable or personal trust. There are two types. You could do revocable or irrevocable. But for now, we're just going to talk about revocable trust. So basically, all of the assets are placed into a trust account, which is governed by a legal document that an attorney would write up. Basically, the document says, how the funds can leave the trust and whatnot. So there's a grantor, which is the person who puts the assets into the trust account. There's a trustee who's kind of a power holder. And I remember we were discussing before, and someone mentioned a power of attorney, and that's basically what you can compare it to. It's not the same because a power of attorney would cease, at the client's death. So a trustee is slightly different, but similar to a power of attorney. And then there's the beneficiaries, and those are the people who receive the funds. So you're probably asking, how can this help me? Why would I want someone else to be the power holder on my money? But basically, in a revocable trust, you could be the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. So what you're doing is you're now taking those assets out of your name, putting them into the trust that you are the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. And we're going to talk a little bit about why you might want to do that. Next, we're going to talk about some things that you can put into a trust account that makes it different from just a normal bank account, and that can be, your real estate, your business, your vacation home. Do you inherit any oil and gas interests or anything of that nature, an art collection? That's something that you can actually hold in a trust account, which is pretty unique. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is the issue of asset preservation, why it's so important. We're going to talk about how a trust account can protect your assets through professional management. And then we're also going to talk about how you can incorporate a trust account into your estate planning and help out with your taxes. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is that we spend our entire life working hard, but we don't always work as hard to preserve our assets. So there are a couple of things to consider. We talked about the specialty assets. Think about by the time you're 40, 50, all of your assets, a lot of them are going to be in these other, specialty assets as opposed to just cash and stocks and whatnot in your account. Another problem is that brokerage accounts don't have that extra layer of fiduciary oversight, which we're going to talk about. Some other issues that we face are just costly probate, estate taxes, and some issues with wills that we'll discuss. This is also something to consider. That I know that, you know, not everyone here's in the top 5%, but, you know, hopefully one day you'll be near there, even if clients are. But the top 5% of the wealthy have 43% of their assets in trust. So think about that. Half of their assets they put in trust accounts because that's how fearful of this other taxes and whatnot. But a common misconception is that trusts are only for wealthy people. You know, after doing a lot of research, they say that even once you have over $100,000, you should start looking into a trust. So it definitely is a common misconception that it's only for the ultra wealthy. So now that we've talked about the issue of asset protection, why it's so important, we're going to talk about professional management and trust accounts. With a trust account, you can't, if it's at a company, you can't do self-directed. You have to choose either, you know, PIA, Consults, UMA, or BlackRock, who we're currently a dual corporation with. So I'd say, I know U.S. Trust, the majority is BlackRock managed, and they'll have a special portfolio manager do a customized portfolio and whatnot. So you have that professional management in there. On top of that, you're going to have a whole team of people working on your account. Your financial advisor is going to work with your trust officer, who's going to work with your portfolio manager, works with the CPA, and then works with the lawyer. So we have that whole kind of, you know, relationship going on. Next, I want to talk about fiduciary oversight. Trust accounts, they have to be governed by the Prudent Investor Act, which is very different from just a normal account. You know, in a normal account, you can be 85 and have an aggressive objective, or 20 and have conservative, which doesn't really work, but you can do it. But with the Prudent Investor Act, the trust company basically has to do whatever is in the best interest of the client regarding the investment objective and asset allocation. We still go by the modern portfolio theory. It's just sort of geared toward fiduciary. So we also talked about specialty asset management. So you also have an officer always working on, you know, the real estate of the house or the value of oil and gas. The next thing that we want to talk about, and it's kind of a difficult topic that not a lot of people want to talk about, but protecting your family through this professional management. One area where you could use a trust account is if, you know, you have any special needs in your family or a client. And basically what that will do is A, protect the special needs person. B, it will ensure that they're still able to receive their benefits and not be disqualified from Medicare or any kind of like government assistance, and just make the funds last for them. It's also used, you know, people don't always talk about this either, but people do have drug problems and mental illness and whatnot, so a trust can kind of be used to protect those assets. I know last year we had a client come to us, you know, extremely wealthy, and he said, you know, look, I have a drug problem, I'm going to be going to rehab. Me and my lawyer drafted this document basically stating that he can't get his own funds he took away from himself, he can't get them back till he's clean, passes the drug test, and then he can, you know, get his funds back. But it's just another way that it can kind of protect people. And then from legal, if any creditors or anyone tries to come after you, these assets in a trust, they're not in your name, they can't touch them, you know. So it's another way. Okay, so now that we've talked about asset protection and professional management, I want to talk about estate planning and tax consideration. So I want everyone to think about how much they think they're going to have by the time they're 40 or 50 years old. And basically do 40% of that, and if you exceed the federal exempt tax limit, that's how much of your assets are just going to go straight to the government. So a couple of different types of trusts are the marital trust, life insurance, where the policy proceeds don't get taxed or anything. residence charitable remainder trust. So there's a couple of different ways that you can accomplish estate planning. You also have taxes professionally done. People are constantly keeping up with the tax laws as they change. So in conclusion, we talked about asset protection, why it's so important. We talked about how professionally managed trusts can help with that, and we also talked about how you can incorporate a trust into your estate planning and taxes. So hopefully now you can understand why the word trust relates to a trust account, and hopefully down the road in 10, 20, or 30 years you'll remember this and think about opening a trust.